It wasn't always easy, but the Kansas City Chiefs somehow, some way are 4-1 to start the season. Brendan Dworzinski, Jake LeBon here with you, our Chiefs instant recap post-game show as the Chiefs knock off the Las Vegas Raiders 30-29. Jake, I don't even know where to start with this game. You have a offensive player essentially committing pass interference on his own teammate on the final play of the game. The receiver who was knocked down then shoving a cameraman after the game. That's not like him. You had the Raiders, for some reason, I guess analytically minded, decided to go for 2 with 4.5 minutes left in the game. They didn't get it. They end up losing by a single point they could have had with the extra point. There were so many bad penalties in this game against the Chiefs, plenty of makeup calls against the Raiders. This game pretty much had everything except an aesthetically pleasing aura around it for 60 minutes. But in the end, the Chiefs get it done. What's your big takeaway? Big takeaway number 1 from the Chiefs' 4th win of the year.
That they won. They're down 17-0 and they won. And everything was going against them. The offensive line could not block anybody. The defensive line could not stop anybody. And yet they ended up winning the game. Like the end result is that they're 4-1 and they essentially end the Raiders season because the Raiders are now 1-4. They're not going 9-3 the rest of the way. So their season is over. And you have the best record in the AFC tied with the Buffalo Bills. The end result is all that matters, but how you got to that end result was honestly one of the worst football games I've ever seen. It was awful. The play was not good. The officials, that was the worst officiated game I've ever seen for multiple reasons. I hate makeup calls. That's not how football is supposed to be played. The NFL has absolutely botched roughing the passer. At least we know kind of what a catch is. Everybody said, yeah, Davante Adams bobbled the ball. I was expecting them, the way that this game was going, to say that was a catch because everybody who was watching it said it wasn't. And then you had just awful decision-making at the end of the game. What are you doing, Josh McDaniels? There's 4.5 minutes to go in the game. What are you doing? Andy Reid, what are you doing throwing it 40 yards downfield to a guy who's never been able to make the good play in Mecole Hardman? When you get 2 yards, the game is over. Hand it off to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Actually, rephrase that. Hand it over to Jet McKinnon. Let him run. Hand it over to Jet McKinnon. Let him run. Hand it to Pacheco. Hand it to Michael Burton. Hand it 2 times. Like I'm all for being aggressive. I am. When it's 3rd and 8, but it's 3rd and 2, make them burn another timeout. If it's 4th and 1, get a yard. The game is over. Whatever happened to this best offensive line in the NFL with the Kansas City Chiefs? And then you got the decision by Josh McDaniels. It's 4th and 1. Why are you throwing a 50-yard bomb? Hand it off to Josh Jacobs. Get a first down. The Chiefs were not going to stop it. All in all, from a horrible officiating, which Carl Cheffers was so shook, he was like, his voice was cracking.
He's going to cry.
He was so shook. And then it was just an abysmal football game decision-making at the end. I've said this again. I don't think Bill Belichick is a excellent game-managing coach, but people think so because everyone else just sucks at it. Like, everyone does. Working time, every coach is awful at game management.
Well, there's just so many things that, it's all about risk management. Like, football is so much just a matter of risk management. And I can understand the deep ball on a 3rd or 4th and short in some instances, like the Raiders' first touchdown of the game. 4th and 1, Chiefs are expecting something short. The game is still completely, up in the air at that point, that early in the game. So yeah, take a shot. That one play probably isn't going to change the end result of the game all that much. I get it there. End of the game situations, though, you have such a small margin for error. Why not do whatever you can to make sure you have the best chance of winning or at least retaining the ball? So I'm right there with you on that. I do not understand the end of game play calling really by either side. I do want to get to some of the good from this game, though. And I think for the Chiefs, one, you start just with the offense overall coming back. Now, did they probably get some help from some just absolutely garbage officiating? Yeah, there's no denying that. They got screwed early in the game. They got help in the second half. I'm with you. That's not how it's supposed to go, but it is what it is. Patrick Mahomes was awesome. And this stat that I just came across on Twitter from Josh Dubow of the Associated Press, who works in the Bay Area, but always roasts the Raiders. It's very funny. He tweeted, the Chiefs with Mahomes at quarterback are now 12-9 when falling behind by double digits. No other quarterback with 5 or more of those situations has a 500 record. In the Super Bowl era, quarterbacks have a 155 winning percentage in those games. And Patrick Mahomes and his Chiefs offenses are 12-9, 12 out of 21. That is utterly preposterous. And the other thing, too, Travis Kelce had 25 receiving yards in the game. He had 7 catches for 25 yards, which on its own, if you just look at that, you think, Jesus, what happened? Like, did the Raiders suddenly add Derwin James mid-game and they shut him down over the middle of the field? What happened? He had 4 touchdowns. He was unstoppable by the goal line. How do you, at the end of the game, Jake, when they threw the last touchdown pass to Kelce, how do you not have 3 guys just holding him at the line? I would take the penalty over letting him get open at that point. I don't know what the heck the Raiders scheme was. I'm not sure what Patrick Graham was trying to call, but that's when I always say it. I say this all the time during game broadcasts. You want your biggest players to show up and make big plays in the big moments. That's literally all Kelce and Mahomes did in this game.
He's a unicorn. I mean, that's all that you can say about that. If it happened once or twice, okay, but 12 times? That's incredible. It really is. And the offense started to figure it out a little bit, but some of the throws that Mahomes had was unbelievable. They really were. And he thread the needle multiple times, and still they left points on the board. I mean, you had a kicker miss 2 field goals. If MVS just simply catches a football, you probably score 7. And he had a good game up until that point. He really did. The offense, it's one of those things where, do you believe in the clutch player? Well, most of the time, clutch players are just good players. It's like, oh, wow, so-and-so is really good in the clutch. Well, if you look at the back of the card, he's just good all the time. It seems like Mahomes is so good in the clutch, but he's good all the time. I mean, that's what's so impressive about that victory for the offense. And I do want to say the defense did stiffen up. I will say that at the end of the game, that was a tremendous throw by Carr. I know Mike Matheny hates tipping your cap. He's a bad hat tipper. But that was a bucket throw to the best wide receiver, one of the best wide receivers in the game. So you just, wow, that's incredible. But the defense, for the most part, in the second half, they only gave up, 3 points. I mean, that was an impressive effort. And, they got a little bit lucky as well. But, sometimes you got to get a little bit lucky in the NFL. But overall, the offense and the defensive line got pressure a little bit late. That was good to see as well. Karlaftis got in there a little bit more. Chris Jones did as well. Another missed holding call. I just don't understand how you can miss some of those. The NFL has an officiating problem, but they're not going to do anything about it. Like, you and I are still going to watch every single Sunday. They have us. They know that. We're not going to, upset the apple cart. We'll come out with some statements. We'll do this. We'll do that. But we're all going to watch. There's no repercussions whatsoever. If it was any other job, we're talking about a much more, I want to say, and I don't want to say investigation, but much more upset. The one thing I am upset about is if the Chiefs would have lost, I hope Andy Reid would have gone scorched earth. Because the problem with that is the NFL needs a coach who's got a lot of cachet, who is a first ballot Hall of Famer, to come out and roast it. I saw a lot of people say, oh, Andy Reid really let Carl Cheffers have it at the half before he went into the locker room. Okay, great. That's not on the record. It needs to be on the record. He needed to come out and say that is complete crap. And Andy Reid's got plenty of money. Take the fine. They're not going to suspend him. He's a coach. That is the only, there's 18 goods because of it. The one bad is now Andy Reid's not going to say anything. It's going to be lost in the shuffle by Wednesday until Sunday rolls around when there's another bad roughing the passer call. But it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter.
So a couple quick hitters here before we get some final thoughts and get out of here on our Chiefs instant reaction post-game. Two quick notes from Andy Reid's post-game press conference, which is going on right now as we do this show. And Jake, speak of the devil here, Andy Reid has been asked at least a couple times about the officiating. Here is his quote as transcribed on Twitter by our good friend Jordan Foote from Sports Illustrated. Quote, "You guys are trying to get me fined. I'm not going there." So no, he is not going to touch that. He might have plenty of money, but he wants to hold on to it. Also, another note we need to get to, and this truthfully really sucks for the Chiefs defensive depth. Turk Wharton got hurt in the first half of the game. He is done for the year, tore his ACL in the game. That's just coming out now as we're live doing post game. That's tough. I know Wharton is he's a backup, but he's a rotational piece on that defensive line that we thought going into the year had some really good depth. Losing a really nice player, not a great, overwhelming player, but a nice player like that, that's obviously tough. Two other quick things to get to here, Jake. Penalties in the end of the game. Chiefs, 5 flags for 72 yards against them. The Raiders flagged 11 times for 99 yards in the game. How many of those were makeup calls? Who's to say? The other thing, too, and we brought this up on 580 Sports Talk on Monday, I said in our keys to the game to lead off the show, offensive line, keep Patrick Mahomes upright. If you keep him upright, he doesn't get harassed, I think the offense is going to be fine. Now, there were some other issues with the offense I wasn't expecting. Comes to the end of the show, we find out Trey Smith's not going to play. The injury report comes out at 5:30 before the 7:20 kick. And I said on the show, well, you can go to the tape. I said, well, and if Nick Allegretti is going to start at right guard, and he did, and he didn't have the greatest game, they're going to put Max Crosby on the right side of the Chiefs offensive line all game and try to attack Wiley and Allegretti. And guess what? Only once in 100 times, but this time around, I was right. And they put Max Crosby over there. I was not expecting Orlando Brown to get bullied all game, though, the way he was by Chandler Jones.
By a guy who hadn't had a sack and had 1 tackle for loss this year.
No, he had been a no-show all year, and he abused Orlando Brown. I think we've hit a new mark. I think we've made NFL history this year, Jake. I don't know if the contract year is undefeated anymore. It might not be undefeated because Orlando Brown is losing himself millions of dollars because he has been horrible. So that's one thing. Chiefs need Trey Smith back because they need as much help on that line as possible. So with that, let's get to some final thoughts for tonight's game. The Chiefs do win by the skin of their teeth. What's your big takeaway, your final thoughts going away from tonight's contest?
The Chiefs had to get a win to give some breathing room. They won the game. The overall thing is look at the standings, and that's all that matters. The Chiefs are 4-1. The Bills are 4-1. They play Sunday at Arrowhead. The winner of that game has a 2-game lead, essentially, on their opponent. If you win that game, you have to have a better record than the opposing team. Because this is what the two teams are going to come down. It's going to come down to Bills and Chiefs for the number 1 seed. And that is a big deal. We have seen how big of a deal that is in the past. Last year in the AFC and in the NFC didn't quite hold to fruition, but you'd rather not play a game than play a game. So the overall thing is that the Chiefs got a win, and that if you anger Patrick Mahomes, he will come back and he will bite you. That's one guy you don't want to get fired up. So Max Crosby, he definitely got Mahomes fired up on that one.
Yeah, there's no denying that. And I think the big thing for me, this was the potential trap game. Dan Lucero on 580 Sports Talk on Monday, he said, hey, this could be the trap game. You're coming off that big win a week ago. Next week, you've got the biggest game of the year against the Bills. Raiders, divisional opponent. You know they are going to be up for this game against the Chiefs. It took everything you had and everything the Raiders had to go full Las Vegas Raiders in this game, but you got the win. That's all that counts. And your best players in the biggest moments came up and made the big plays. Patrick Mahomes, 29 out of 43. You've seen it on the bottom line here. 292 yards, the 4 touchdown passes to Kelsey, who he just gets open. That's all you want. MVS came up and played well. McKinnon had a really nice game. You got enough plays from the defense. Whatever it takes. Winning is not easy in the NFL. And when you've got, again, the biggest game of the year just 1 week away, you better make sure you win the games leading into it. And now you've got 5-1 versus 5-1, or pardon me, 4-1 versus 4-1 for really the driver's seat for the number 1 seed in the AFC. That's a pretty good spot to be in if you're the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll be breaking all of this game down coming up on Tuesday's editions of Mic'd Up and 580 Sports Talk. Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton Caster from noon until 3. Then you can join me and Dan Lucero for 580 Sports Talk from 3 until 6. We'll be wrapping up all this game, all the biggest performances, and just how stressed we were during the course of action. But for Jake LeBon, I am Brendan Dworzynski. This has been our Chiefs Instant Reaction post-game show. We will talk to you guys coming up Tuesday on 580 WIBW.